In our last module, we discussed how we could implement a predictive parser by just looking ahead at the token and potentially uniquely determining which production to use. We also said that this is not possible for all possible grammars, but there are certain category of grammars where they may be possible. We also saw an example where of a grammar which is not LL1. In fact, it's the same grammar that we have been using all through, and we found that it is not LL1 because for a look ahead of just one token, there could be multiple possibilities for which production to use at every step. So to review, if two or more productions have a common prefix, the grammar is not LL1. Okay, we saw this for both T and E in our previous example. In the case of T, the int is a common prefix in two or more productions. In the case of E, T itself is a common prefix across two or more productions. So the idea is to solve this problem by factoring out the common prefix across different productions and making and introducing a new non-terminal and making multiple productions. So this is also called left factoring of a grammar. So if a grammar is not LL1 parsable, it is possible to make it LL1 parsable by left factoring it. And the idea is factor out the common prefix into a single production. So let's look at an example. So here is an example of two productions of E that have a common prefix, namely T. E can either produce T or it can produce T plus E. And so I can factor out the left portion of the two productions into a single production, and I can make a single production, namely E produces T X. I introduce a new non-terminal X, and then I say X produces plus E or epsilon. Okay, and notice that this grammar is equivalent to the original grammar, except that there are no two productions now that have the same common prefix. Okay, so this is exactly left factoring, and what is left factoring doing is basically delaying the decision. So if I want to produce E through E, I don't need to decide based on the current token which production to use. Instead, I would always, in this case, try to produce T first, and then after I have completely produced T, I now have the luxury of choosing between two different productions. So I have been able to kind of delay my decision. And how much have I been able to delay it? In this case, I've been able to delay it by an entire substring that would have matched T. And so in this case, we are able to delay this decision, and now the grammar potentially is LL1, except that we also need to do similar things for T. So now let's look at the production for T. T produces int or int star T or parenthesized E. Now we said last time that in this case a common prefix int causes problems, because if I want to produce from T, I don't know which production to use if my next token is int. And to solve this problem, once again, I can left factor this grammar, and I can introduce a new non-terminal. And so I would have only, instead of having three productions for T, I will only have two. The first one produces int y, and y is the new non-terminal, and the second one produces parenthesized E. Y produces either epsilon to represent the first possibility, or it produces star T. Now once again, this grammar does not have any two productions for the same non-terminal that have the same prefix, and so this grammar does not is potentially LL1 parsable. Now if I put all these things together, so I have left factored both the productions for E and the productions for T, and if I put together the entire grammar, I get a grammar like the following: E produces Tx, X produces plus E or epsilon, T produces int y, and y produces epsilon or star T. Actually, I should also say T produces int y or parenthesized E. Now this grammar represents the exact same language as represented by the original grammar, but it turns out that this grammar is LL1 parsable. In other words, it's in LL1 grammar. And to see that, we can basically show that if I have to produce any non-terminal E, X, T, Y, just by looking at the next token, I should be able to precisely identify which production to use. Now, for E, it is really easy because there is only one production. So if I have to ever produce from E, I just have one option, which is TX. For X, there are two options, and depending on what is the next character, I will be able to decide which one to choose. Similarly, if I'm at T and I want to produce, now here it's very easy, right? So if I'm at T and the next token is int, then I'm very sure that I must be producing T, the first one, T1, which is int Y. On the other hand, if the next token is open parentheses, L parent, then I should be using the second production, right? And similarly for Y, we will find that if the next token is star, then I should be using the second production, and if it is something else, then I should be using the first production. And similarly for X, actually. So if the next token is plus, then I should use the first production. If it's anything else, I should use the second production, which is epsilon. Okay. Now, how do I figure out these things? We're going to discuss in a minute, in the future modules. But here is what the parsing table looks like. You can represent this fact of look-ahead parsing or predictive parsing using a parsing table. For an LL1 parsing table, this would look like the following. The rows are each of the non-terminals, in this case E, X, T, and Y. And the columns are each of the terminals, int, star, plus, open parentheses, close parentheses, and the end of input marker $. Now, what this table represents is that if I have to produce from E and the next token is an integer, which production should I use? So for example, this table says that if the next token is an integer, then I should use TX. Okay. Now, how we arrive at this table, we're going to discuss later. But let's for now just understand what is the structure of this table, and then let's understand how to use this table. And later on, we are going to discuss how to construct such a table. So once again, if during my leftmost derivation, I am at I have this state WE beta, and my next token is an integer, then I should derive WTX beta, right? That's what this entry means. Okay, so in other words, the TX here represents that I should produce TX from E, which is actually the only production for T. On the other hand, for E, on the other hand, if the next token is star, then there is no entry here, right? So there is no entry here, which means if the next token, if I'm at this stage and the next token is actually a star instead of an integer, then I can conclude that the string is not parsable. In other words, it does not belong to the language represented by this grammar. Okay, so this is a cross. Maybe I should write the red pen. Okay, similarly, a plus should not be a next token if I'm trying to derive from E. However, if there's an open parenthesis, once again, I should derive TX from E, right? So that's what this row for E means. Now let's look at another row for X. If the next token is an int or a star, then that's an error. But if the next token is a plus, then I should use X to derive plus E, okay? And if the next token is in close parentheses or a $, end of input, then I should derive epsilon from X. That means I should use the second production. All right. Similarly, if I am trying to derive from T and my next token is an integer, then I should use the first production int y. On the other hand, if the next token is open parentheses, then I should use a second production, which is parenthesized e. Finally, if I'm trying to derive from y and my next token is a star, then I should use star t, which is my second production for y. On the other hand, if it is either plus or close parentheses or dollar, then I should use an epsilon production, the first production, produce epsilon from y. Now, once again, we haven't so far discussed how to construct this table, but let's say some oracle has given us this table, and now we want to write our LL1 parser, which is going to look very similar to a recursive descent parser, except that now we are not going to do any backtracking. At any step, if we have a choice, we are going to consult this table to figure out which production to use. All right. So recall the recursive descent algorithm. We are going to do, for the leftmost non-terminal S, we are going to look at the next input token in the input stream. Let's say that is A. And we are going to choose the production rule shown at S, Ath cell in the table. In the table that we just saw. All right. And that's the production rule we are going to choose. And if there is no production rule, then we know that it's a parse error. But if there is a production rule, there should be only one, because if the grammar is LL1 parsable, and we were just going to use that, and that way we don't have to do any backtracking. So once again, to look at the formal algorithm, recursive descent algorithm, without backtracking, with predictive parsing, with a look ahead of one token, let's again review. A token is going to be the type of tokens. Example, int plus left parentheses, right parentheses, times, and dollar. Next is going to be a global variable that contains the pointer to the next token. Also, we're going to define some helper functions, and unlike the original recursive descent parsing algorithm where we had to use function objects, we won't need function objects in this case, because we are not going to do any backtracking, and the function objects were really meant to facilitate backtracking in that algorithm. Here we're just going to define a term function which is going to check whether the current token in the input stream pointed to by next is equal to the input argument talk or not. So bool term takes an argument token talk, and it returns a boolean value which represents whether star next equals talk or not. And while it's checking, it also increments next pointer regardless of whether it was a match or not. Okay. Once again, notice that unlike the original algorithm, where we were also passing objf, which was a function object. Here we don't actually need to pass any objf. So what is term checking? It's only checking whether the first token in the remaining input stream, as indicated by the next pointer, is talk or not, and that's it. And after that, there could be anything, right? So, okay. Now, for the nth production of non-terminal S, we are going to define a Boolean valued function Sn, just like we did in the original algorithm. Once again, unlike the original algorithm, we don't have any objf function object for the rest of the input. And so this will succeed if a prefix of the input matches this production Sn. So Sn corresponds to the nth production of non-terminal S, and it will return true if a prefix of the input matches this production, this nth production of S. We don't care about what happens after the prefix. We're just interested in whether a prefix matches or not, and that's it, right? This is again unlike the original algorithm where we were checking both the prefix and the rest of the input. Here we are only interested in checking the prefix. Similarly, for non-terminal S, we are going to define a function called bool S, which is going to check whether if a prefix of the input can be derived from any of the productions of S. Could be S1, S2, Sn, or n for n different productions of S. Now recall that in the original algorithm we used backtracking to figure out which of these it is. In this predictive parsing algorithm, we are not going to use backtracking. Instead, we are going to use the LL1 parsing table to figure which production to use among all the different n choices for S. Okay, so for the nth production, S produces let's assume hypothetically that it produces a non-terminal X, a terminal T1, another non-terminal Y, a terminal T2, and a non-terminal Z. And let's assume that this is the nth production of S from n different, any number of different productions. And so the function Sn would look something like the following. We're just going to check first whether a prefix matches X, and if it does, next is going to automatically get incremented by whatever is the length of the matching input. Then does the next input match T1, that's by term T1, and then does the next prefix of the remaining input match Y, and then after you have matched that, does the next input match T2, and finally does the prefix of the remaining input match Z. Notice that after all this, it's possible that there's some inputs still remaining in the input stream, and Sn does not care about it. It only says whether a prefix of the input matches the nth production S produces xt1, yt2, z. Alright, so this is the implementation for Sn. We can similarly kind of need to define the body of the function S. So for non-terminal S with n productions, we are going to use this implementation. We say we dereference next to obtain the token A, and then we check what is A. So if A is T1, then we use return S1, Tn, then Sn, and this is just based on the LL1 parsing table. And if it does not match any of the tokens, T1 or Tn, where I'm just using some arbitrary placeholders T1 or Tn, then it matches the default, and in which case it just returns false, indicating that a prefix of the input does not match S. So once again, notice that unlike the original recursive descent algorithm that involved backtracking in this particular function, this implementation does not involve any backtracking and only uses a look ahead of one token to figure out which production to use among the n choices.